Hello, my name is Nathan Maurer, and this presentation is about implementation strategies for electronic health records. The objectives of this presentation will include criteria for selecting the best EHR for the organization, considerations for building the teams needed to implement a new EHR, the importance of considering and leveraging culture in such a large process change, and strategies for overcoming the inevitable resistance that always accompanies change. We'll also be reviewing some of the pitfalls experienced in previous EHR rollouts and how these can be avoided. Lastly, I'll review my personal experience with the addition of the Epic EHR to two different organizations that made the transition during my employment. The purchase and implementation of an electronic health record system, or EHR, is a massive undertaking. No matter the size of the organization, such a change involves significant cost, time, and transitional struggle. Failure of the change would be wasteful and frustrating. Choosing the right EHR for the organization is important, and the struggle can be minimized with careful matching of EHR features to organizational needs. Usability involves the ease of use and accomplishment of the EHR's intended purpose. To the extent possible, interactions with the EHR need to be intuitive. They must be and feel natural and logical. They must have the desired outcome, such as retrieval of the desired information or effective transmission of orders. While efficiency may not be immediately attained because of training and practice needed for a new process, EHRs are expected to improve efficiency and productivity. Because technology advances and evolves so rapidly, the system chosen should be able to adapt, integrating new technologies and language as health science changes. Related somewhat to adaptability is interoperability, efficient communication between the EHR and other programs or other complete EHR systems. This makes it possible to share information with any provider who needs it, and programs that have communication protocols that allow information sharing between networks have greater usefulness and longevity. If an EHR and its implementation process are unaffordable, then they are unattainable, and the high cost of these systems and significantly higher cost of their implementation and maintenance are important considerations. However, these need to be balanced. Simply choosing the cheapest option while ignoring whether that option will benefit the organization would be irresponsible and ignorant. All of the foregoing selection criteria are vital. I would select Epic as the current best choice, because it best fits the first three criteria of systems I've used, even though it is expensive. Between the two EHRs I've used, Cerner and Epic, Epic has the most intuitive system. My experience with Cerner led to many frustrating roadblocks while trying to find patient results or enter information. There was a lack of hotkey operations available, and switching constantly between the mouse and the keyboard throughout assessments was frustrating and felt very inefficient. Epic is highly configurable, as I have used it in conjunction with a number of different inventory, imaging, and laboratory data programs. Epic is good for interoperability, not because of its ease of data transfer between different programs, but because it's so widely used that other healthcare systems can often communicate with ours because they also use Epic. Other programs, such as Cerner, have put more effort into common language goals with other programs than Epic has. There is no denying that the program is very expensive, but the features it brings are worth a higher price for organizations that can afford it. It's important when bringing in a large process change to do so in an organized, systematic fashion. To do so, a dedicated team of creative, goal-oriented, skillful communicators is needed. The complex process of overhauling information systems will be full of options and obstacles, and a variety of perspectives is needed to foresee as many problems and benefits as possible. The team members should be committed to the planned change and believe in the necessity of its undertaking. All team members should have a vested interest in the success of the change and have a stake in that success. This may variously come from having financial interests or responsibility, being a day-to-day user of the new system, or being motivated by innovation or regulatory compliance. Because of the complexity of the project and varied important perspectives, team members should be adept at resolving conflict. A project leader should be selected for broad clinical information systems knowledge. For this reason, Hebda, Hunter, and Czar emphasize that an informatics nurse is an ideal project leader. Nurses have direct dealings with many different departments, have strong organizational skills, and regularly practice effective communication. The project leader also must have a commitment to the process and to the organization to see the project through to the end and beyond, to prevent any disruption in the time-sensitive and complex implementation. For the project to be successful, all disciplines should be represented on the team. Executive leadership has to commit the funds and time needed. Lower management needs to bring feedback from individual departments and lead and inspire those departments to participate in the change. And respected frontline users bring valuable clinical insights and set the example for their peers. Sipes was quoted as saying it was important to lead with culture. Culture refers to the values held as most important in an organization and the methods widely accepted to express those values. Some cultures may value results, while others may place more emphasis on patient experience and satisfaction. To lead with culture, the positive points of culture must be identified first, and time must be taken to identify how the change plan will help the organization express those values. If results are the cultural focus, emphasis can be put on the efficiency of the new EHR and clinical decisional support to improve patient outcomes. If the culture values patient interactions and satisfaction, staff can be shown how the EHR can free the nurse to spend more time with the patient, or improve patient perception of the advanced care available. In this way, by finding what is important to different factions of the healthcare system, all levels of employees can be engaged. More experienced, respected, or influential staff members should be targeted for input and engagement to create a positive perspective on change. By engaging staff early, before changes are implemented, areas of resistance can be addressed before they are disruptive. Frontline staff will be more likely to recognize how workflow might be disrupted, and opportunities for adjustment of the system or of the education process can also be identified. Aguirre and Alpert point out that failure to seek wide input early in the process often occurs to keep the process simple. Actively engaging this wide input prevents later failures, resistance, and system redesign. Engaging staff in the planning improves both the feeling of connection with the change and later personal investment in its success. Some resistance to change always occurs, such as with physicians or experienced staff who are set in their ways. This resistance can be reduced by using the implementation strategies already discussed, such as seeking early input and obtaining commitment from stakeholders. Communication is key. While change is intended to be of benefit, not every change will be welcome or positive. Creating proper expectations and acknowledging challenges will create a more collaborative and communicative environment. It should be acknowledged that transitions are difficult, that there will be temporary inconvenience through the adaptation process, and workflows will get worse before they get better. It may help to focus on benefits that can be expected later, such as the better care patients will get from having access to electronic records, ease of access for users from remote sites, better and safer order entry and medication administration, and the ability to save time after learning the system. There are many ways in which implementation of the EHR can be disrupted, but careful planning can reduce them. Unattainable deadlines can be created by unrealistic expectations, poor planning, or scope creep, the unfocused addition of too many elements to the system that creates excessive reprogramming and technical delays. Training will be inadequate if additional staffing to fill clinical needs during training isn't considered, or if the training budget is inadequate. Talking up only the positive points of the new system, or creating unrealistic expectations for what it will accomplish, can derail staff engagement when these prove unreliable. Inadequate tech support during training, during go-live, or in the weeks and months to follow will hobble successful implementation. To avoid unattainable deadlines, good planning is needed. It may be best to reduce all steps of the implementation process down to their most basic components, then calculate the amount of time needed to accomplish those more manageable increments. It will then be possible to count back from the planned go-live date and determine if the training, installation, and testing will have adequate time. Vanilla installations, meaning installing the standard components of an EHR and waiting to customize more until after the go-live date, will simplify the implementation and reduce scope creep. Having a realistic timeline and understanding of the amount of training needed will allow planners to get early commitment from executive and management teams so that staffing needs and costs are addressed, so that training of all staff can be thorough without sacrificing proper patient care. Since the process change will naturally be difficult, this should be communicated correctly to staff so that unrealistic expectations for easy or immediate transition do not lead to disillusionment and failure to follow through on changes because of disappointment. Technical support needs to be included in the budget, not only for adequate trainers, tech assistants, and super users through training and at go-live, but also in the important months of follow-up to evaluate system use, find unanticipated problems, and correct any inefficient or negative workarounds being used to avoid challenges encountered in the new systems. I worked at 2 different large health systems while they were implementing a change to the Epic EHR. There was a lot of whining about extra training and spending for the system, and many nurses I worked with did not want change. A few retired before they had to learn the new system. And while this is partially negative because of the loss of experience, it did clear the way for more engaged personnel. With the use of barcode scanners for medication administration, many nurses felt they were slowed down. Med errors have been drastically reduced for nurses who follow the policy protocol of removing meds from a Pyxis, using 2 patient identifiers, scanning each medication individually, and stating what it is and its purpose before opening it in the presence of the patient, and then administering it in real time. It is also a simple matter to take all the meds out, scan them all at once, and put them in a cup for the patient. This workaround is where most of our med errors come from now, along with failure to open the correct chart because of failure to scan the patient wristband. There are still doctors who expect their schedulers and whoever else is handy to do all of their order entries instead of using the EHR. Those are receiving more, and although these are receiving more and more scheduling sanctions for doing so. Some processes, like transmitting orders and records or checking for completed consents, are more efficient, but charting is still slower and requires more required hunting and clicking to present quantifiable data to the system for its electronic processes. I do appreciate the alerts programmed into the EMR for duplication or inappropriate med prevention. This has prevented patient harm and med errors, though it seems to reduce some of the critical thinking ability of those who depend on it. At the same time, there are some alerts or screen errors that are incorrect or are of no use, and time can be wasted trying to find a workaround in order to perform a task or medication administration that you already know is correct. Overall, I think the benefits outweigh the negatives, but I hope the systems keep improving and not just shifting. If an EHR can't be used, then it's not useful. If it can't be configured, then it can't improve. If it's not interoperable, it's failing its communication potential that makes an EHR worth paying for. And if you can't afford it, it's not going to help you. But it's starting to get where you can't afford to not have one. To effect a widespread change like bringing in a new EHR, you need a committed, cooperative team that represents the culture that you are trying to enhance by upgrading information systems. Build your team carefully and inclusively with a strong, knowledgeable, and creative leader that can unite the group in a common purpose. Don't just expect resistance, but anticipate and diffuse it with reasonable expectations and appeal to the cultural motives of the resistors. Plan carefully, use all the resources at your disposal, and it's possible to avoid common pitfalls in the implementation of a new health information system. Thank you for listening.